All right. Let's dive in. I'm sure other people will pop in as they arrive, but thank you everybody for coming to this chat. Today we're talking about how to identify customers for customer stories. Um, hmm. There we go. So just a quick intro. I do think I know most of you, but if we haven't met yet, I am the founder of Uplift Content. So we are a small content marketing agency. We focus on long form content like customer stories, ebooks, white papers, and blog posts. And we work primarily for B2B SaaS companies like ClickUp, Okta, and WalkMe. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, please reach out and connect. I would love to, grow my community. So here's what we're going to cover today. We are going to have a quick chat about why it can be challenging to identify customers for customer stories. We're going to cover briefly, very briefly, 41 ways to find customers. And I'm going to share a few tips from some of your CMA colleagues. So for example, Mary provided a tip for me that I'm going to share. And then at the very end, I'm going to show you an AI idea from Angela Ferrante from Laudable. She did a Mastermind presentation about a month ago, and this idea was hers, but it fits into this presentation really well. So I wanted to add it as well to share with you. So for this session, for this hour that we're together, I really do want this to be a conversation. I don't love being the center of attention, and I certainly don't love to be the only one speaking. I do want this to be a back and forth and a conversation. So please hop in at any time with your questions or your comments. I am going to pause at different points in the presentation and ask for your experiences. So please don't be shy. Please hop in and share your experiences as well. Okay, so the first snippet that we're going to talk about are 3 core challenges that I see as to why it is hard to find customers to participate in customer stories. So number 1, you don't necessarily know which customers have a good story to tell. Just because they are a happy customer doesn't mean that they have a story that is impactful or a story that has a unique use case or outcomes that are meaningful. Another reason is that sales and CSMs aren't nominating customers for stories. And this can be for a variety of reasons, but most likely it's probably because they don't want to bother the customer, or they're busy selling, or whatever their primary job is. Number 3, you aren't sure which customers are allowed to tell their stories. So, are you allowed to use their logo? Are you allowed to name their company? Do they have a no endorsement policy for vendors? These are all things that can be tricky to keep a handle on. So those are 3 that I have come up with here, but I would love to hear other people's 2 cents. Why is it hard to find customers to participate? Anyone? Michelle, Carilla, Maria, Stephanie, anybody?
I'm going to say it's
here.
because, sorry.
Somebody damn it, Zoom, you always make this so awkward. I'll mute and then I'll be back.
I think it depends on the size of the customer. When we're talking like somebody like Colgate, legal's gonna not allow them to be named in the case study. We do know that we can do anonymous, or we can try to get a little bit more creative if they can't endorse a vendor, then how did we enhance their environment, and try to go that route? I think it always comes down to legal and the type of company.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Wendy. Diliana?
Hi. Sorry, my camera's off because I'm actually like in bed and I haven't done my hair. And yeah, so I'm
Just
just
tell me
thinking,
you're not in labor. That's all I want to know.
I'm not in labor,
Okay,
but
good.
I mean, hopefully I won't be in labor as a result of this Zoom call. Just kidding. Um, one of the challenges I always have with this is getting people on board with the importance of these. And oftentimes I'm not the one reaching out directly. So people are super awkward about even starting that conversation. So that's one of the things that I see as a challenge. Maybe not with, I don't work with huge organizations, but from the smaller teams, they're always hesitant to give me access to the people that I need.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else want to chime in? All right, let's move along. So the next section is the 42 ways. So we're going to go through them, as I said, quite briefly, but I will pause in certain spots and ask for your experiences with these different methods that I'm going to mention here. So I think the most obvious way to start when you're looking to identify customers is to start with your best customers. So reach out to your top customers. They are probably your top customers because they're satisfied, they're happy, and because of that, they're probably going to be willing to participate. Follow up or keep in touch with customers that you know are satisfied. Again, they've also had positive experiences, so they are likely to be more willing to participate than others. Of course, leveraging your advocacy program is a great way to identify enthusiastic customers. And then watching the data points. This is a good one as well. So for example, how much time are the different customers spending in your advocacy program? How many of them are attending events? Which ones are completing your courses or your certificates? These are great indicators that they're engaged and they're likely pretty happy. So I am curious, especially about the data points here. Is there anyone that uses other data points to identify customers for customer stories?
Hey, I can chime in there a little bit.
Yeah, great.
Over the last year, we have grown our customer awards program. So every year at our annual user conference, we have what are called Inspire Awards, where we get to recognize some of our customers. And that's through self-nomination. So essentially them telling us their story and then us being able to then spotlight that on stage at the event. So like that's been a really great data point of people who are interested and willing to tell their story. So even if they're not winners, because we only have a small amount of those, we've been going back and saying like, hey, you're a finalist from the Inspire Awards. That's so cool. Would you like to engage with us to spotlight the story for further, post-event or whatever? So we've seen a lot of success in that in the last year. So if you have any kind of awards programs or community initiatives where you're already asking for storytellers in other capacities, piggybacking off of those and taking that next step has been one of our most, I would say, productive pipelines for customer stories and identifying folks who are interested in telling them.
Yes, love that. And we're going to touch on this a little bit further in the presentation. I just noticed that you added a question to the chat. I am going to send this presentation out to the attendees afterwards, so don't worry if you have to drop early. That is no problem at all. And I'm just catching up on the chat. So Morgan from Austin, hello. Carilla, customers will agree to a story, but then they can't obtain approval. Yes, very true. So I think, Carilla, maybe what you're saying is that your contact or your champion is more than happy to participate, but then there are other people that get involved and kind of add a no to that. Brittany agrees with Carilla. or they aren't allowed to include KPIs and success metrics. Yes, we all would love to include KPIs and success metrics, but sometimes that's a sticky point. So, you know, it's always a bit of a negotiation, or it can be a negotiation for sure. Carilla adds, or they don't, or they have none to show because they didn't set any benchmarks. Yes, yes, yes. And our product impact isn't easily quantified if you haven't been measuring before after implementation. Yes, that's a huge one. I've written about that in the past, how crucial it is to set those benchmarks at the beginning of the engagement. And if there's some way to get sales or customer success involved in helping set those benchmarks, I think that would be an amazing part of the onboarding process. Sam says clients don't have a relationship with the company, they just buy the product. I think, Sam, you're referring to the challenges of finding customers to participate. So yes, I agree, definitely. Carilla, we just launched a self-nomination awards program. Yes, so very similar, I think, to what Ashley was saying. I can't wait to reach out and ask them if we can publish their story. Yeah, for sure. And Mary says, have you tried including their PR teams? Which is another great point. We're going to talk about that towards the end of this presentation as well. Okay, so let's move along here. So the next section that we're going to talk about is highlighting the benefits of participating. So we all know that we need to highlight what's in it for them to participate. So make sure that the benefits are really clear. How can participating in this story help with your customer's reputation in the industry? Or how can it help grow the company's brand awareness or lead gen, for example? If you can target specific industries or use cases with your stories, which I would encourage you to try to do, this can align closely with your target audience, and this will increase the relevance and appeal of participating. Showcase previous stories. So this is very meta, but if you can highlight the positive impact that other customers have had by participating in a customer story with you, it may encourage others to participate as well. Next, we want to sweeten the ask. So you can offer incentives or discounts, and I'm going to dive into more detail on this in the next slide. But you know, you can always encourage people to participate with things like gift cards or swag or a discount. You can upgrade the service. So this could include giving them a higher level of support or some additional features or upgrading their plan. You can give them some exclusive access to things like beta features or early product releases or special events. You can give them the photos and the video that you will take or make as a result of doing the story together. So for example, you can give them any headshots you do of them, or any of the branded photography that you do, or B-roll if you're doing a video. Those are all quite valuable assets to be given, and it's a nice way to sweeten the ask. Does anyone have experience? Has anyone done any of these sweeteners? And I'm curious, if you have, what do you find works the best?
Brittany here. So I have not personally done this, but our sales team is equipped with offering incentives, discounts, or an upgrade of service during the new business or renewal cycle. I've definitely found that the renewal seems to be a little bit more of like an easier ask because the customer knows they're already well established. Clearly, they're renewing with us. They've seen the ROI in the product. So sometimes, you know, if you get a customer to agree to a case study in a new business contract, while it's technically in the contract, 6 months from now, their tone could be very different depending on what their experience was with the onboarding. But renewals, I have definitely found, it totally makes sense to partner with the CSM, the AE, whoever owns that, to try and work those in there, because if they're renewing, they're clearly seeing the value, and it's a much easier ask, and you already have the proof points likely to create the case study.
Yeah, I would agree. Anybody else?
I'd be curious to hear if anyone on the call is using that upgraded service. How did you get buy-in for that? That is something we've brought up before with our leadership teams, and our services team is not so willing to offer discounts on services. So I'd just be interested in hearing, if you put together any kind of proposal, or if you were able to show value back to the business in a certain ROI. A lot of our job is ROI tough, I would say, to tie back to revenue dollars directly. So, I think leadership oftentimes, if there's not that dollar sign on it, especially when you're asking for a trade in value, it's kind of a harder sell. So just if anyone wants to connect on that, we don't need to go into a tangent here, but would definitely like to hear from you.
Just giving anybody a chance to respond, just in case they have a few words to say about it.
Yeah, I have one insight. Luckily, with our professional services team, I was able to partner with them on incorporating an incentive into our advocacy program. We did, design kind of qualifications around what type of customer would be able to earn the incentive. So just to set the stage, for customers who participate in 4 or more acts of advocacy in a year, has to be unique. So one speaking opportunity, one case study, etc. They unlock 20 hours of professional service hours. And professional service hours can be thousands of dollars in a renewal or, new business contract. And we've set the qualifications that it has to be from an enterprise brand, enterprise strategic customer. And the reason why the professional service team agreed to this is because, long-term, increasing the customer's lifetime value overall. They know that if they're investing in these high-profile customers who already have large deal sizes and likely of expansion, the more likely that we will see ROI out of it. And we also, another incentive we offer is an ROI workshop with our business strategy team. So typically these are, 3-hour-long workshops that, take weeks to prepare for on our side. And so they're only offered to very specific customers. And again, that is an incentive that, kind of we have put in place. So we know we're targeting the right people, but we also know that the right people will be getting a value add out of it, and have longer lifetime value in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you for that info.
Anybody else? All right, so I have a couple of slides actually to kind of elaborate on the discount piece. There's two sides to this debate, and so I'm gonna show you both sides of the debate. So the first side is from Lauren Stefano. She's the director of customer marketing at WordPress VIP. And so she's pro discount, but she does say, make sure you do this before trading a discount for a story. So before we offer a discount on renewal, I work with sales to see what the customer has already achieved, identify a topic that showcases their work and fits with our strategic goals, and get alignment on the story topic, channels, and timing. So for example, we'll publish a case study in September, you'll host a related webinar in October, and we'll promote it on our website, email, and social. So she says, having these details worked out with our champions ahead of time helps us have more throughput in the long run. So I thought that was a really great way to think about it. So the next opinion is kind of anti-discount. So this is Michael Sciano, Senior Manager, Customer Marketing at Service Titan. So he lists 4 reasons not to offer a discount for a story. So number one, it's tough to get sales and customer success on board because discounts impact their quota and forecast. If a customer values your product, then it doesn't make sense to discount the very thing that they value. Number three, what happens next year when that discount falls off? And number four, your customers will start asking for a discount for every advocacy activity. So instead of a discount, he suggests offering things like free tickets to an annual conference, a speaker spot at an event, a one-on-one with an executive, an interview or with media, or a spot on a podcast. He says, in my opinion, offering a discount turns the story into a transaction. We should be forming stronger partnerships instead. So I'm going to open the floor up. I'm just curious if anyone has any reactions to these pros and cons that we just talked about.
I'm liking Michael's approach because I think he has a point where they're going to really miss that discount the next year if you offer them a discount on your regular services. So I think the idea of offering a free extra, I think somebody else earlier than this was talking about that, something like, you know, the one-on-one advice, or the business strategy, or something that's extra that they will value, but it's an extra. Sounds like it would probably be a really good way to go if that's possible.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Anyone else? I noticed Brittany here says, I've found that always framing it as a way to boost their team's recognition throughout the organization and showcase their team's success to executives has worked well. I think maybe that was in reference to something else. Sorry, Brittany. Okay, let's move along. So back to the 41 ways. So another kind of grouping that I have is asking for feedback. So for example, you can leverage your CAB and user groups. So invite feedback and insights at your next CAB session or your next user group meeting. And through that feedback and insights, you can get a sense for whether any of your customers have an interesting story to tell. You can tap into user communities. So I'm going to go a bit deeper into this on the next slide, but you can look at things like you can look at things like online forums and community platforms that are related to your product or your industry. And you would want to engage with active users who are satisfied or happy, who talk about your product and express that they're happy or satisfied with it. And finally, you can also organize a customer focus group or a roundtable, and just make sure that you align the topic of the discussion with the use case that you need for your stories. So Mary very kindly provided this little tidbit. So you don't have to actually own the community to use it in this way. You can look at other communities in your space. So she suggests reaching out to engaged users with an email script like this. I'm at XYZ company. I'd love to learn more about your experience with our product. Would you be open to a call? And then once they tell you their story on the call, then you can ask if they'd like to share the story with more people. So let me just go back and open up the floor. Does anyone have any comments, or does anyone want to share their experience about using CABs or user groups or communities as a way to identify customers?
I do have a question. It's not directly related to CABs, but I am curious how people have dealt with trying to get stories from those larger enterprise customers and dealing with, you know, the privacy and marketing regulations that comes along with a lot of those big names. You know, do you do an anonymous story, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I've worked with Colgate, Kimberly-Clark, a lot of big companies, and a lot of them are CISOs on our CAB. with Colgate. He was a cab member, and we literally walked through the case study because they're so conservative that the only way to get their name on the case study was to do it his way. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And so he knew exactly how to word that case study to get it passed. Others, it is about doing it anonymous. We did get United Airlines, and I could tell you that one took us 3 quarters to get, because it does have to go through their legal. Sometimes it's executive to executive. It's just a time thing. And when you're going after those big companies, you're going to deal with legal. So it is how you write that case study, and the wording. And sometimes who you're working with, they don't know. So you ask them up front, do we need to make this anonymous, or can we word this in a way to get it a named case study? I've done it both ways.
That's really helpful, Wendy. Thank you for sharing. Uplift is working on a story for one of our customers about their customer, who is United Airlines. So hearing the 3 quarters.
Yeah, it does take a while. It's not something, you have to be patient. And I would ping them about once a month. I didn't want to inundate them. I knew they were working on it. They said they, spent hours going over it. And by the time they did approve it, we had our products were named something new.
Oh,
so we had to still
no.
go back and adjust it. So it does take patience. And I just tell everybody, because everybody's waiting for it, right? They want that big name case study. And it's like, it's coming, but be patient. I don't want, and I had the sales rep also, talking to them, any word yet. Legal sits on it. They're not in any hurry.
Yeah.
So we just wait so that approval comes across. And I do use sales and customer success to help push that along.
Yeah. All right. So the next little grouping is listening to your customers. So of course you can monitor social media, and you would want to engage with happy customers who are sharing positive experiences and insights about your product, on social. You can use Gong. This is something that actually is going to be at the very end of the presentation. It's the AI tip at the end of the presentation, but the Coles notes would be do a search for keywords that show satisfaction with your product or service. And then you can host customer appreciation events. So this is a great way to, obviously celebrate your customers' successes, but also identify opportunities to get them to share their customer stories. Keep an eye on what customers are saying. So, there's a lot of crossover with all of these things that I'm mentioning, but you can use customer feedback and as NPS surveys. So you can add a question to those surveys. Are you interested in participating in, and you can list the different advocacy activities that you're hoping for, and you would obviously want to include stories. You can monitor review sites. So a positive review on a site like G2 would be a great indicator. Customer award nominations and submissions. So I think it was Ashley that brought this up at the beginning of the conversation. Need we say more? These are simply a goldmine. And you can also look at user-generated content. So if a customer is involved in creating a blog post or a webinar, for example, there can be opportunity there to expand on their story. Next one is chat with other teams in your organization. So, chat with sales, chat with CSMs, chat with product teams. So product teams sometimes use happy customers for their beta programs. So those could be the same customers that might be willing to do a customer story. You can engage with customer support. There are lots of customer support teams that ask people to rate the support that they've received. And so if they're consistently providing ratings that show that they're happy, that could be a good way to identify them as well. And finally, you can also incentivize your employees. So just as you can incentivize the customer, you can incentivize the employees. So gift cards, swag, a shout out at an all hands or on a Slack channel, that can be a motivator as well. You can use your website and newsletter. I'm really curious about this one. I'm curious if any of you use this method. So you can actually make the ask on your main customer page, the page where you have all of your customer stories. Just add a CTA or an invitation to participate. You can also make the ask in your newsletter. So if you're sharing customer stories in your newsletter, it also makes sense to ask if anyone wants to participate. You can also create a dedicated landing page. So this could be something like domain.com/share story. And on this landing page, you would obviously want to share the benefits of participating and then ask them to, fill out their name. The possible downside of this is that you might get people who raise their hand who don't have a story that you want to tell. And that can get a little bit awkward, but I do recall, oh shoot, I forget her name at the moment. The G2 woman, somebody help me out. Caitlin. Yes, thank you. Caitlin has shared in the Slack community a few times this really cool PDF that she sends people, and it kind of is a menu of the different ways that people can get involved. Everything from like a testimonial to like a video customer story. So that might be one way to kind of help if you are getting volunteers where you don't actually want to tell their story. So I'm going to open it up. I'm curious, has anyone used any of these techniques?
I have, and I'm curious if anybody out there has had success with that. I always put it in the newsletter, both internally and externally. My success is really going to customer success and sales, using their win of the weeks, promoting them, doing the rah, saying how great this case study is, video testimonial. Usually you'll have one that really resonates with a lot of them, and they use that one a lot, even at sales kickoff. But I haven't had any luck with actual customers saying, yeah, I would love to do this off of a newsletter. So I would love to hear if anybody has.
Anyone? Going once, going twice? I did it once, Wendy. So I use a SEO tool called SEMrush, and they had a ton of case studies. And so I reached out and I said, hey, I'll do a case study, because I wanted a backlink.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, I'll do a case study. And they said, sure, write it yourself. So I said,
yeah, and that's the
okay.
part I know they're not going to do. I think we had that on one of our platforms. I can't remember, one of the community ones. I'm like, they're never going to go in there and write it themselves. I thought that was too much. It's easier to jump on a call
Oh,
and
yeah.
go over the questions with them and then write it up myself and send it over for approval.
No one's going to write it.
Nobody is.
When they asked me to write it, this is what we do for a living, I was like,
Right.
oh, damn it, I don't want to do that.
I
Okay.
think
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
as far as putting it in the newsletter and things like that, what I've seen is when I ask people, what their experience is or their expertise, or if they'd like to share their story to help other customers in a newsletter or something, I'll say something like that. It's not so much that I see a lot of people jump on that link and come and sign up to do it. What I've seen is that over time, it gets in front of them enough to where when we do connect, it's something that they want to talk about. So it's kind of like, that the whole marketing has to get a message in front of you 7 times before you're going to do something with it. Like it's just putting that little noodle in their brain. It's getting them to think on it. And then when they're ready, it gives them something to bring it up and reach out, or when you're having a conversation, it comes up. And so they know that the opportunity is there, and it just helps in the future. So I haven't seen a ton of signups, but when I do have conversations with people later on, I'll get, oh, hey, I saw in the newsletter that you were looking for XYZ. And that's where I see that it becomes helpful.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're all so busy that, you know, why would you raise your hand to do something extra in a way, right? And so having that repeated kind of message just working away on your subconscious, I think that that's a very valid point. Something else you mentioned, Mary, I'm curious. I wonder if instead of asking people to tell their story, I wonder if we worded it differently. I think you mentioned, you know, what are you struggling with, or what, you know, what are some best practices that you've, give me some advice. Like if you worded it in a different way, I wonder if you'd have more takers.
Yeah, absolutely. You will, because that's why when you see companies in our space asking, you know, they're thinking about building communities and stuff like that. Because when you have those communities or roundtables and things like that, you can start to pick apart the conversations and see where there are stories. And just knowing that those stories are there, it's so easy to say, I'd love to hear more about that, and go from there. Because then there are more, they want to tell their stories, they want to share their successes. And while you still have to overcome whether or not they can publicize it or all of those things, maybe you can share it just with other customers. Maybe you can use it as part of an upsell or cross-sell campaign, things like that. So yeah, I think the way you word it is everything. I mean, I know a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't know how to ask customers to do things because it feels like I'm just asking them to do things for me. But when we think about it and think about how they benefit from it, because people internally, we just want to share, we want to be helpful. And if we can help them do that, then it's a win for them as well. So wording is everything. You know that, you're a copywriter.
Words are everything. Do you see like the hearts and sparkles like flying around my head right now? All right. So the next little section is on co-creating and co-marketing stories. So you can establish partnerships with other vendors that your customers often use in conjunction with your product, if that makes sense. So if you're product A and your customers use product A and they also use vendor B, that could be a great opportunity to create a partnership story. You can offer to craft the story together. This one makes me a little nervous, but you know, if you really want the story and the customer is hesitant, but they would get more interested if they were more involved in the story creation process, then maybe this is an opportunity. You can also just make sure that, well, this is essentially one of the benefits of participating in a customer story is making sure that this is seen as a co-marketing opportunity. So with your customer, you want to present this story as a way to leverage each other's audiences to expand reach and visibility. We've got a great kind of tip from Jeannie Nitschke here. So she says, make sure you add value first. One mistake customer marketers make is asking for a favor first instead of adding value first. One approach I have found works well, especially with enterprise accounts, is making friends with your customer's PR organization right out of the gate. And so, one of you mentioned PR earlier in the conversation. So, so with the PR team, ask them about their brand goals and offer to bring forward opportunities that might be aligned with those goals. Ask them what protocols you need to follow to engage with them and honor them to the T. And when you tee up that relationship before you have an opportunity to share with them, when you tee up that relationship before you have an opportunity to share with them, there's less friction and it's more likely that they will engage with you. Then when a media opportunity crosses your desk that might be a fit for them, you already have a relationship in place to build on rather than going in cold. So be flexible, start small. You can ask new advocates. So when you're onboarding a new advocate, send them a survey asking which advocacy activities they'd like to participate in. Make sure you offer flexible formats. So, you know, maybe someone is just not comfortable doing a video. Okay, great. So do a written story instead. If they're not comfortable with the time commitment of a written or video story, then maybe it's a podcast, or maybe it's even a testimonial. So I blew my next point, start with a smaller task. So testimonial is probably the smallest thing that you could ask for, or a podcast is, you know, another step up. Or you can host customer spotlight webinars. So this would be sharing your having your customers share their successes on a webinar. And this can be an opportunity to kind of identify whether there's more to the story that they might want to tell in a full customer story. Again, Jeannie says, you know, start small and start with an internal ask only. Big brands are worried about risk to their brand out in the wild. Instead of presenting an opportunity for a keynote on the main stage of an industry conference, offer a fireside chat at your company kickoff with your CEO or CCO. Starting small builds trust first, and then everyone wins. Ensure that your customers are comfortable. So we touched on this before, but reassure your customers that they will be presented in a good light, they will be the heroes, and you are only going to publish this story if they are 100% happy. Anonymous stories are okay. We would prefer to name them, but you know, if you have no choice, an anonymous story is okay. Make sure you include proof points and details for credibility and impact. Make it easy for your customers to participate. So for example, if you are having a user conference and your customer is there, arrange to do the interview at the conference. They're already there, 2 birds, 1 stone. We've got a tip from Jacqueline Gu. She's the senior customer marketing manager at Fastly. So she says, I find that the best place to get customers willing to talk is during our annual customer conference. I work with our sales team in advance of the event to invite a handful of customers to talk to me in front of the camera, as well as have mini interview walk-in slots set up for the day of. It's a lot of fun, and I make it an easy lift and enjoyable for our customers. So we also, of course, want to remove barriers. So one way to do this is to put it in the contract. You may or may not be successful, but you can try and get approvals up front by including a clause in the contract. Or you can offer to have them do a different advocacy activity. So instead of, as we said before, instead of a written or video story, they could do a webinar or a podcast or a fireside chat instead. Often those have fewer approvals than a more formal customer story. And Amanda Peacock at Xylo says, when it comes to customers' stories, it's important to remember that behind those logos are real people with real stories. Fireside chats and podcasts, they're not just easier to get approvals for, they're our stage for showcasing the amazing journeys of our customers. So let's ditch the stats and humanize the experience. That's where the magic happens. So this is, we're nearing the end. This is the last piece of the presentation. So this is an AI hack from Angela Ferrante of Laudable. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, Angela did a mastermind in the CMA Weekly group about a month or so ago. And this particular point I thought fit so well with what we're talking about today. So if you want to check whether a customer is ready to do a case study, you can use this AI hack to help you do it. So the task would be, you want to check if a customer is ready for participating in a customer story without having to pester the CSMs. What do you need to do this? You need transcripts from the last 1 or 2 calls with the customer, and then you need ChatGPT 4.0 or something where you're able to upload documents. And the prompt would look something like this. Review the transcripts from customer success calls with our team at, and the team at, to help determine whether we are ready to invite this customer to do a customer story. Specifically, please assess if it's evident from these calls that there's enough positive sentiment, positive experience, and positive results to warrant a customer story about the outcomes this customer achieved. And then you would upload the transcripts. I'm curious if anyone has tried something like this or has used Gong or something else to do something similar. Anybody? Mike, April, Stephanie, Cindy, Becky, Cassie?
I haven't used anything like this, but I've used notes from Salesforce.
Okay.
So I'll go into Salesforce and see what they've talked about. And then again, I reach out to sales and customer success to ask them, are they ready? Does this make for a good case study? But I haven't actually, this is great, but I've never seen this.
It's worth a try. You know, AI is far from perfect, but it's worth some experimentation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else? Okay, well, this is the end of the presentation. So again, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to me if you have any questions. I will coordinate with Mary and we'll make sure that you get the video and or the slide deck or both after the call.
We can, Emily, see if anybody has any questions or things that they want to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
We might have a couple of minutes to discuss like what people are working on in customer stories right now.
Yeah, let me get my face off the screen here. Oh
no.
I'm going to stop the share.
If anybody wants to bring something up, we still have a few minutes. It's a good time to brainstorm together and come up with solutions to any issues you might be having.
Yes. I'm just looking at the chat as well. So yes, please, let's open up the floor. Any other experiences that anyone wants to share related to identifying customers or anything else related to customer stories? Happy to have some more conversations.
Yeah, I like that idea, Cassie. Casey, I cannot seem to get your name straight no matter what I do. I'm sorry, but
I know it's confusing. It's Cassie.
Cassie.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the chat, just if anyone didn't see it, I just mentioned a lot of times I would summarize, speaking engagements that folks did for us or webinars with a blog post. And then you get a nice written asset that doesn't require additional approval. And the two can be paired together. You can have, the recording link at the top of the blog post, that kind of thing. So that was one trick that I've used in the past to great success.
And what does is that something you're writing yourself or you're using it as a prompt on AI?
No, just writing them myself. And usually they're pretty quick, just a couple of paragraphs. Like you're really trying more to drive, eyeballs to the video itself, but you can pull some great quotes from it and that kind of thing. But that's been successful. And I'll also include them in our customer newsletter too. So then, you're again driving more folks to the full video. But it just helps to have something in writing a lot of times with those assets.
It does, yeah. It's that content distribution.
Yes,
Really
exactly.
getting it out there. Yep. Yeah. I've seen a lot of AI
sorry.
tool to do that. Go ahead, Emily.
I was just looking at the chat. I noticed April mentioned that she uses Chorus, and she's done a more manual version of listening in on enterprise calls. I think she was referring to the AI hack that I shared. And Becky said, I can see it working well, but haven't had a chance to do it yet. Yeah, I think we all see a lot of opportunities to try things with AI, but finding the time to do it is another challenge.
It really is. What, April, would you mind sharing on that more manual version of listening?
Oh, sure. And actually now I want to try the search terms idea just to poke around and see if that helps. But basically, like if we know there are certain industries or companies that we want to be focusing on, like going into Chorus, which is a competitor to Gong, like same idea, automatic recorder of sales calls, and using that as a way to kind of creep on the calls that doesn't intrude on those conversations. And then I'm able to tap those sales folks on the shoulder to say, hey, so-and-so mentioned a great customer story. Is it an okay time to reach out to them? Any concerns? Are they in a spot with their contract that would make it awkward? So lifting the burden off of the sales folks or the CSMs, because I'm finding those little nuggets myself and then approaching them to say, hey, could we reach out to this customer?
And April, do you think, because it would take hours to read through the transcripts or listen to them, do you think that there are phrases that you could identify that you could put into a search?
Yeah,
Or if you were using AI, is there a way that you could frame it with instructions so that AI could search for it for you?
Yeah, I think that would be the key. And I don't know off the top of my head, like what the magic phrasing would be that would indicate like, oh yes, there's a success story here, would need to play around a little bit. Right now, it's just been a matter of like cherry picking and then listening on, two times the speed to try to get through it too. But yeah, I think I need more tinkering, but it's just giving me inspiration to play around with that more.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like to do is look at some data and see if there are things like about this customer that, they're using the platform a lot, or they're responding to a lot of, or opening a lot of emails and clicking through, or they've recently done a certification with the company, or just different things like that. And then like use that information to kind of inform me on what potential accounts are being successful so that I can tap into those calls with a little bit more understanding of where they're coming from instead of, I don't know what your approach is, but I'm just thinking that's what I would do before I decide, oh, I'll look at this call. Like maybe they're sharing a story in community or something like that.
That's a great idea. I love that.
Okay. Well, Emily, you are doing another call next month.
I am. Next month, we're talking about interviews and the questions that we should ask and which ones are really meaningful, and specific questions for specific types of stories. So if you want to tell a use case story, what are the specific questions that you need to ask related to use case stories or adoption stories, for example? So join us on September 11th. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Emily.
I think Sam Harris on here she's been posting about different questions to ask too. So I just love seeing all of this crowdsourcing of knowledge that the community can tap into. So thank
Yes,
you.
I hope, Sam, I hope you'll join us on September 11th.
Yes, hi, I would love to. I love interviews. I think they're my favorite part of creating a case study. So I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. We'll see you there.
Awesome.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. It
Thank
was
you.
wonderful to have such a great engaged conversation with you all.
You too. Have a great day, Emily. Thank you. You're
Thanks.
amazing.
Bye.
Bye.
You.